Welcome to the Book and You podcast. My name's Jared Cagle. Today we have a very special guest, one of our very own Maxwell Leadership authors. She is a leadership expert. She's a speaker. She trains and coaches businesses, clients in the nonprofit space and the for-profit space all around the country. Even this year, she influenced 95 clients in just this calendar year. Jenni Catron, and we're going to be talking a little bit about her book, Culture Matters, that we publish coming up in February 11th. Jenni, I'm so thrilled that you're with us today.
Jared, thank you so much. This is fun to get a chance to just connect a little bit more, but I'm grateful for how you invest in authors. So looking forward to the conversation.
We're thrilled, and what an incredible book. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But before we do, tell me a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and how you got started as an author.
Yeah. Well, I can remember back to being like in third or fourth grade and writing my first manuscript. It was, I was a kid that loved reading and then, as a result, loved the idea of writing. So I remember that I had this dream of writing as a little kid, but I quickly shelved that project because you grow up a little bit and you realize that feels like a really audacious goal or dream, right? And so I didn't come back around to it until I guess I was working in a nonprofit in a church space, and I had the opportunity to speak and write, and kind of unexpectedly was found myself in those types of environments. And backstory is I had worked in the corporate world. I worked for a record company. That was dream job out of college, was working for a record company in Nashville. Was on the business side, just to clarify, but I loved it. I was an artist development director. I helped oversee marketing and branding for Christian artists. And it was dream job. And I made an unexpected pivot into church ministry. The church that I was a part of was growing rapidly, and I was invited to come on staff as executive director, overseeing staff, the organizational development, the operational side of ministry. But in that, I found myself in opportunities to speak at conferences, and I began writing a blog just because I wanted our congregation to hear how I was thinking about leadership. We were growing, and they needed to be closer to the decision making and understanding how the leaders were thinking. So that's really how writing started. And then I had a mentor in my life reach out and say, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?"
Wow.
And my first reaction was no. And then I remembered that third grade little Jenni who was like, had this manuscript tucked away in the closet. And so that was kind of the start of it. I didn't realize how much writing would just reignite some passions and dreams. And getting the privilege to do that has been just an absolute joy.
What a journey. I love did you say second or third grade, Jenni?
I was somewhere in second or third grade. It was
Second or
somewhere in that
third
area.
grade.
Yeah.
I'm picturing you with the cheese head on, Green Bay Packers fan from Wisconsin. It's too cold to go outside for 7 months out of the year. I don't know.
Completely.
And
Yep.
she's writing a manuscript. That's incredible. Was it fiction or nonfiction? Do you remember?
It was fiction. I cannot remember anything about the story, and I so wish it was kept, but I think it got lost somewhere in a family move, somewhere. And I'm like, gosh, I wish I had that, because I'm sure it would be very entertaining.
I know. How cool is that? Well, your book is not fiction. It's one that is based on truth, absolutely, and experience, and helps people. I wonder if you could talk to us about why did you write Culture Matters?
Yeah. I gave a brief overview of music business. Then I was in ministry. Then I launched my own consulting company. And the thread through my career journey has been, it was unexpected. I didn't expect this was what I would love to do, but what I really love to do is help build great teams. That whether it was in the record company or in a ministry context and some of the nonprofits that I've worked with, when a team was aligned, working well together, when there's unity and camaraderie and connection and commitment, the teams are nearly unstoppable when those things are present. And then I also experienced the opposite of that, teams that were just, siloed, and politics and tension and infighting and territorialism were kind of dominating the environment. Just how frustrating and how demoralizing that is to be a part of. And so, just as my journey kind of went along, I found myself more and more connected to the idea of when a leader is healthy and thriving and a team is healthy and thriving, just how phenomenal it is to be a part of that organization and to do the work together. So, really, Jared, it's really the culmination of about 20 plus years of work experience and saying, this is really what I love. I love helping build great teams. But what I found is that so many leaders don't know where to start. We all know what it feels like to be a part of a great team, but a lot of times we don't know, well, is it just more staff fun days? Is it, extra perks for employees? Or what is it exactly that creates a really thriving team environment? And that's what I've attempted to build in the lead culture framework, which is what we outline in the Culture Matters book.
Yes, you do. And we'll get to that in a bit too, because I love the way you outline that. And it really brings the outline to the whole book as well. So what I just heard you say for our authors out there that are listening, you started with passion, something that
Mm,
you were passionate
yeah.
about and
Yep.
build teams. And then you went straight to the problem and help how you could help bring a solution to that problem that people have.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot in that for our listeners in terms of when you're writing a book to help people, do it with something you're passionate about and
Right.
really solve a problem, right?
Yes. Yes.
Pick
Yep.
a problem and solve it.
Yeah. Well, and Jared, that was me like working out the problem that I was facing as a leader and saying, okay, what do I need to do to get this right? I had two very distinct experiences of a really great team that I was a part of. And then we went through a merger and it went from amazing to awful overnight. And I thought, I never want any employee to ever have the experience I had in that second scenario. And so I just became relentlessly committed to figuring out what do you do? What does it look like? How does a leader lead culture? And so, yeah, I love what you said there of like, it really does start with a passion. And then what's the problem that I'm trying to help other leaders solve? And
That's
that's
good.
really what it is.
Tell me a little bit. I'm going to hold up the cover for those who can see it. Uh, I love the cover. I
Thank
think
you.
I think it's a beautiful illustration. It's not just the words. It's also telling a story. I want you to unpack it for us.
Sure.
What's the story behind the cover?
Yeah. Covers are so interesting to try to figure out, especially for a business book of sorts, right? And so what's happening there is there's an arrow because we're trying to create alignment in that we're trying to, again, every leader knows this, that you have a mission that is deeply important to what you're doing, but you need a team of people aligned to help you achieve that mission. And so what's happening on the cover is you see all these people moving into alignment in that arrow.
Uh,
And
Great.
that's the spirit of it, is that it's getting people to work together to achieve a mission. That's ultimately the heart of culture.
How great. And I love the different colors too, right?
Hmm.
It feels multicultural. It feels like you really took all that into account.
Yeah, for sure. It's the reflection of, I think sometimes people think of, well, when you're trying to create a culture within an organization, are you trying to make sure everybody's the same? No.
Mhm.
You need various perspectives, experiences, backgrounds, history. You need people, all different type of people to help, accomplish the mission, but they do need to be aligned around the things that are core to who you are and how you achieve your mission as an organization. So alignment is really around who are we by way of mission and vision? How do we work together? What are the values, beliefs, and behaviors that guide us as we try to accomplish the mission and the goal together? But the more we can be conscientious of having different perspectives, different voices in that mix, the more it brings more richness to what we're trying to do together. So yeah, there's definitely intentionality in that. I love that you picked up on the subtlety of it.
No, I love it. It's the intentionality is important, and as you said, the covers that part of the book writing process is challenging, but definitely important. I wonder, one of the reasons we started this podcast is to help first time authors kind of move to the front of the line by
Hmm.
giving them insights from our experiences, and I wonder if there would be any advice that you would give from your experience that to a first time author that hasn't experienced it yet, that may be some advice that would help them.
Sure. I think the things like I reframe that in my mind of what do I wish I had known early on
Mhm.
to um, in my writing process. So this is actually my fourth book, which feels crazy to me. Um,
Not including the first one in second grade, by the way.
yeah,
There's
yeah, not including that one. We never published that one. Um, but I think the thing that I naively thought when I started writing and published my first couple of books was, okay, my job is just writing, right? Like I'm just, whew, once I finish the book and I turn that over, everything magically happens. And the reality is that no one cares more about your published work, even when you have a great partner like Maxwell Publishing. At the end of the day, as the author, you have to care most about making sure your book gets into the hands of people. And so I think recognizing that as an author, just being a partner with whomever you're working with, whoever your publishing partner is, and and doing everything you can to help your book get into the hands of the right people and not just assuming, okay, I just hand it
great.
off and publishing takes over. To a degree, great publishers, do their pieces of the
Mm,
puzzle. But the
yeah,
more you see it as a partnership and you recognize you're still the biggest advocate for your book, you're still the one that is going to be the most deeply connected to it, believe in it the most, and be unapologetically a champion of that work. I think I wish I had known to do that more intentionally earlier on.
it's great. Great feedback. You're a CEO of your own company. You lead at a high level. You help other CEOs and leaders. You travel a lot. You've got a busy schedule. Um,
Sure.
how did you make time? There's listeners out there that are trying to jump off this ledge and start writing their book, but they have a lot on their plate, and they're challenged by the fact that it really does take a lot of time.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Yeah. Um, it does take a lot of time, and it really comes down to um, being, is this really, do I really believe in this? Do I really want to make this happen? Like, how badly do I want it? If I go back to my first three books, I was working full time in another context, and this was kind of my side project. Writing was kind of the hobby of sorts, like the side hustle.
Yeah.
And so I was fitting it into all the margins of my world, whether that be early morning writing sessions or afternoons or or late afternoon or evening, or I would take, a couple days off around a weekend and take a long weekend and go, pound out a bunch of words. Um, what was interesting, Jared, and there's probably a lot of your listeners that are in this situation, and that once I started my own company and the book is actually like core to our business. It's the framework we use for everything we do. It became even more critical that I had a book to reflect our work. And yet I felt like I couldn't get out of the hamster wheel of running my business to make time for writing. So I say that to say I completely understand the tension. There was 8 years between this book and my last book. And those 8 years were the first 8 years of my company. And I finally had to sit down and say, this is so core to my future
Mm,
and what I'm doing as a business leader that I have to make this a priority. Now, the reality of that was I still needed to be working with clients. I still needed to be bringing in revenue and juggling all the other responsibilities. So, very practically, when I get serious about writing, I'm always writing a little bit along the way because that's just who I am. But when I get to it's time to turn in a book manuscript, for about 5 or 6 months, I intentionally get up about an hour or so earlier every morning. So this usually means I'm up in the fours.
mm,
And I am writing for about 2 to 3 hours before I get into the rest of my day. And so that discipline works for me. I think everybody's got to figure out what they do, but the point I'm making is that when I get into the really intensive season of writing, I have to make a very intentional sacrifice of time, and it's something like my husband and I agree upon of like, okay, the next 3 months, the next 4 months, you're just up super early. It's when it's the least disruptive to our family. So I just know I'm just up, I'm committed, I pound it out before anything else starts to distract me, because I get easily distracted. If I get into the rest of my day, it's hard to come back to writing. I don't know how you are or a lot of other authors are, but I have to write first, and that's when my best work is going to emerge. So I have not found a better way running a business and juggling all the other responsibilities. I
Yeah.
just know when it's intense writing time, I have to just make the commitment and make it a priority. Um, and it pays off. And honestly, like this last round, especially writing this book, Jared, I was getting up at probably 4:30 for those 3 or 4 months. And I was so energized by it because I love writing. Like, I love writing. And it's something that feels like a luxury to me.
Wow.
And so when I didn't feel like I was sacrificing sleep because I was enjoying it so much. Now, it's not sustainable for year long, never having a break. But when I need to do an intensive season of writing, that's when my best writing emerges. But I don't know I'd be curious what that looks like for you, because you do a ton of writing.
I do. I do a ton of writing, and it's similar. It has to be in the morning. A lot of times, I'm forced to do it at other times,
Sure.
but the best work is in the morning.
Yeah.
But you said a couple of things there that were so crucial that I just want to double click on before we move too much further. You said you're always writing a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Then there's seasons of sprints where the
Yep.
commitment ratchets up. The
Right.
thing about it though, when that commitment ratchets up, you're still doing it every single day. You said I
Yes.
get up every morning. I give 2 to 3 hours. You know, you may some of our listeners may not be able to get up at 4:30. They may be more of a 5:30 type of. Maybe you're like 5:30 ain't happening. The fives ain't happening for me, but this,
Right. Right. Yeah. Because
even
some
if,
creatives, it's like the complete opposite. It's like the late night hours are when they
which
come
is
alive.
totally fine. Which
Totally.
you have to know you, but do something for a chunk of time every single day. If you
That's
want
right.
this book to come out, you got
Yep.
to commit to that every single day. And then the third thing that I heard you say is the energy that you got from the process,
Yeah.
right? Of course, that comes from your passion, your anticipation of what you're going to produce, but it also comes from the daily commitment and discipline produces a desire.
It's
It
true.
produces a stronger flame in you,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like a second wind. If you got to push past that
That's
wall,
right.
and once you do, and you get into that rhythm, yeah, I just want to encourage our writers and our authors out there. There is a second wind, and
That's good.
if you do love the journey and love the process, I think you're going to find that it's going to illuminate not only your book but actually your whole life. Another
Yeah.
thing you said, Jenny, I'm just taking notes, so you're
I
giving me.
I love what you're drawing out of this. Like you're saying it more succinctly than I did, which is fantastic.
No, 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 no. You're the teacher at this point. I'm just taking notes. But one thing you said also at the top of that was, hey, I finally realized 8 years into my business, this was a big component of our business moving forward. We
Yeah.
need to spend some time and invest in this, call it issue of culture and helping companies solve this problem. Talk to me about that business plan.
Mm.
What does it look like? What's your vision? How is it already? Have you already seen an impact of this book on your current clientele? And how do you foresee it impacting your business moving forward?
Yeah, such a great question. It was so in the book I bring out the framework that we use in all of our consulting. And there's a little bit of like, gosh, are you giving away trade secrets? But in actuality, it's helping people understand what we really do. It's putting on paper what we actually do and helping people see the breadth or complexity in some cases of what it takes to actually build a healthy and thriving culture. And what became clear to me as the business was growing, the first few years of the business, I'm coaching on leadership and team culture and some things like that. But I didn't have the foresight way, right? I didn't have the way we do this. It was like I had different tools in my tool belt from great training and, leadership from Maxwell and others throughout the years, but I didn't have hey, this is what we do and how we do it. And without that, I think you don't have a long tail to your business in the way that you'd like. If you think about some of the best consulting organizations and businesses, there's a clear proven process that they use to do the work that they do. And so for me, that was the awareness that if I wanted to keep growing my business, I needed to get really clear about what we do and how we do it. So that was what I produced in the book. And then it was sitting down with a strategist. I hired a coach to help walk me through this of like, now how do we use this, not just to sell a bunch of books, but to actually grow the business. And so that's the plan we're working right now. Cause as we're recording this, it's not quite release date, and we're in the thick of running the game plan. But to answer your question, we're already seeing the impact. So I also do speaking. And I've gotten invitations to events for next year that I would not have gotten if I didn't have the new book coming, right? People are hearing about the book. Some of those are coming because of people I asked to do and write endorsements. And so they learned about what I was working on. That piqued their curiosity. They made invitations to events and stages that I would love to be a part of. And so we're already seeing some of that momentum of just as some of the early influencers are becoming aware of the work, they're making invitations to things that are, again, helping expand the business. We're doing a summit where, we're talking all about culture matters. And I have a host of different speakers coming in that are a part of that. And again, you're just feeling the momentum of, as we're talking about what's coming, people are engaging the content more. We've already seen leads increase, opportunities to be on other podcasts. So everything that you want to help grow the business, all of those metrics are up and to the right. And so I anticipate once the book hits the market, hopefully that momentum just continues. So yes, we're seeing the intent we want is to help us connect with more potential clients and customers and serve them better. And we're seeing all the metrics that indicate that's happening.
Beautiful. Yeah. Writing
Super
a book.
fun.
Yeah. It's you know, some people make the mistake of thinking that writing a book is a means to an end, uh,
Mm,
an end of itself, but
right.
it really is just the beginning. And you have to be thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
As an author, as a
Yep.
business leader, it's 2025 now.
Right.
We have social media at an all-time high. We're more connected than ever. People are paying attention to your personal brand. And part of why we do this podcast is to help our own tribe as
Right.
they're considering building their own businesses, building their own brands. Book writing could be a part of that. So I love to
That's
hear
right.
the testimony of effectiveness there. One of
Yeah.
the things I loved about the book too, Jenni, is you wove in a story of one of your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were talking about, or as you wove that in throughout the book, I found it really interesting. It's a little bit unique to do it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And I wonder, if you could shed some light on that process. What inspired that? Maybe what were the challenges? What were the
Sure.
benefits of doing that?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that you found it interesting. It was a gamble. So I'm a business leader and thinker. And so my content, if I'm not careful, can be a little bit dry, right? Like it can be, I mean, the framework in the book is pretty intense. Like hey, here's your game plan, like go work the plan.
Yeah,
But I knew that first of all, we need to be able to see the stories, we need to feel the pain points, we need to see ourselves in the work. And so I'm also a big fan of Patrick Lencioni's work. And of course, he always writes the fables, right? And then he unpacks the principles at the back end. Well, I always get a little impatient with the fables at the beginning because I want to get to the practical because that's how I'm wired. And so I think I probably borrowed a little bit from the way Patrick writes, but
sure.
I am more of a framework and lists and checklists. And like, I'm just kind of wired a bit more like that. So one of the things I had learned in one of my previous books was learning to write a little bit of dialogue, right? So that's a whole nother, if you're not on the fiction side of things and you're pretty much more of a practical writer, like dialogue is much more challenging. And I will tell you this, Jared, I had so much fun um, figuring out in this book because again, I wanted the reader to be able to envision themselves in throughout the book and not be dry content that I have to work through like a textbook. So I wanted to take the story of a team, like I changed the names and dynamics, but the actual like what we did and what um, the the process they went through was consistent with an actual client. And so I wanted readers to be able to see themselves and hear the interaction between team members as they kind of tried to work through the challenges of building culture. So it was all, I'm probably rambling too long in this, but it was just a
Oh,
fascinating, like such a fascinating experience to think of the characters. So then I had to think of, I think there's maybe 6 or 8 different individuals that are a part of the team that are woven throughout the book. And so then I actually wrote character descriptions for every one of them. So
wow.
every one of the teammates, I had what their job description was, what I knew about their personality, and again, kind of based loosely on an actual team, but changing the names and dynamics enough that they can't go, oh, that's us. Um, and so because I needed the consistency, because again the story weaves through the entire book, so I needed to make sure that when Steve chimes in, there's consistency of his skepticism about what we're doing. But when Ashley speaks up, she's the eternal optimist who thinks everything's going to work and it's all going to be okay. And so I was trying to envision like those different personalities that you encounter in every team and how they would interact with what we're trying to guide them through in building their culture plan. So it was so much fun. It stretched me as a writer to dig into the dialogue. And then I had to be careful of like, is there enough, am I bringing enough tension into the conversations and the equation? Like and I'm sure totally amateur still on that side of things, but it was absolutely so much fun.
It keeps you in because you accomplish the principle. The principle is bring the reader into the story, bring the
That's
reader
right.
to the page.
Yeah.
Like it's especially on a book like this, you already said it, but on the front cover, you say it's a framework.
Yeah.
Guys, this is a blueprint. It's a if you can take this and apply it to your life and your leadership and your company, and it's going to make a difference. So it already on the front is saying, hey, this is more like a textbook than a novel, but
Correct.
you
Yeah.
get in there to keep me in and to
Yeah.
keep me experiencing, right? Every reader has senses. We're
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
And so to keep us experiencing helps us understand and actually capture the points. I
Yeah.
think it's incredible. I think it
Thank
was
you.
very well balanced. I certainly got the Patrick Lencioni vibes myself.
Yeah.
And it helped me get to the end. So I'm wired the same way in terms of I catch myself every time I get a Lencioni book. I don't read the fable first. I go straight
Straight to the right.
and then like the one Getting Naked. I'm like, Getting Naked. Somebody recommended that to me this year.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm definitely
He
not reading
needs to retitle that book.
the story. Come on, Pat. I'm definitely not reading the story on this one first. Let's go to the principles. And it has nothing to do with anything that it seems, but of course. But yeah, I go to the end. But what I just want to make the point, most people are not like you and I.
Right. That's right.
You're just not. They need more than that. And what you did is you kept us going. You kept the reader turning the page. And then when we get to the end of each chapter, we have very applicable sections. And I want you to
Mm,
talk about those for just a second.
yeah.
The culture team action plans that you put in
Mhm.
the chapters, the clarity checks, the additional resources that you can scan a QR code for. How important is that um, to your book, and how important do you think it is for other people to consider having content like that in their own books as well?
Yeah. The reason that I put them in the book was I was thinking through, so here's how I thought about this book is I'm typically walking into a client and I'm walking them through the framework, and they don't have the framework. They're just following my guidance, right? And um but I wanted to write a book that if they couldn't hire me to come in, or they just had a rock star person who can totally facilitate this work on their team, I was thinking about that individual. I was thinking about me 20 years ago when I was going, I don't want any team member to have a terrible experience working here. And I was committed to figuring out how do we build a great culture so that we attract and retain the best employees. I was thinking about that Jenni from 20 years ago, and what would she have needed to, what playbook would have given her everything she needed to succeed? So that's who I had in mind. I had, some of my current customers in mind as well. And so I wanted to create just these checkpoints because there's a lot of content. I mean, it's pretty dense. This book is almost 300 pages. When I got done with it, I was like, good gosh, like what happened? But I wanted them to have something that they could kind of just check in on. So in the framework, we talk about you need to build a team, a culture team that helps you implement this work. So don't do it as a lone ranger, build a team. So then the culture team plans are just action steps. So pull that team together. Now here's what you need to do after you've read this chapter. Here's what you need to do to take action as a team. So it's just giving you that checklist. Secondly, the clarity checks were, okay, how are we doing? Right? So they're just questions to say, hey, on what we just covered, where do we stand? Are we doing well on most of these, or do we need, and it just kind of gives you a chance as a leader to just take a pulse on where do I need to focus. And what I wanted to do with those is not overwhelm the reader with everything they read in the chapter, but give them actionable steps and then these little clarity checks to go, okay, these two are the ones I need to focus on first. These are the ones that are weaker for us. So just giving resources to help keep guiding the reader on where to focus was really the heart of those tools.
Yeah, and you did that, and I would just encourage our listeners. These frameworks, I mean, when you get to the end, even just for the clarity checks, it inspired me immediately on how to lead my meetings, even, and think through assessments of my team, and making sure that one of the questions that John always asks, John Maxwell, is, what am I missing?
Right.
What's it like to be on the other side of me?
Yeah.
We don't become self-aware by ourselves. What an interesting concept. We have to have people speaking into our lives. So he's always asking, what am I missing? And it's a little bit earth-shattering to be in a room with your hero and for him to look at you and be like, hey, Jared, what am I missing? I'm like, I don't know.
Right. Nothing.
Yeah. But that's what I thought about with these clarity checks. Like we need to check those boxes together.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, to your point, that, we talk a lot about self-awareness as leaders, but there's also like organizational self-awareness of like,
oh, good.
And it's hard for us as leaders to have a pulse on how does it really feel to be a team member here, right? And what might they be missing that feels obvious to me, but isn't obvious to the rest of the team. And that's what those are designed to do, is just kind of help you get a little pulse point so that, again, just
Great.
to equip you to know where to focus as a leader.
I think it's awesome. Culture Matters, a framework for helping your team grow, thrive, and be unstoppable. It is available everywhere books are sold, February 11th, but available for pre-order as we speak.
That's right.
At culturemattersbook.com. Make sure I got that right, Jenni.
You did. Culturemattersbook.com.
And you can get the book and actually more resources on that page. And it's going to add value to your life. This episode has certainly added value to me, and I'm sure many listeners out there. If it has, let us know, leave a comment, like, subscribe, email us, let us know how we can support you. Publishing at maxwellleadership.com. As always, you can reach us there with any questions. if you're interested in learning more about how you could publish your own book, or you just have a question for us about this podcast, that's the best way to get in touch with us, publishing at maxwellleadership.com. Jenni, before we sign off, I'd love to give you a chance. Just any final words of encouragement for our listeners today?
Sure. Well, Jared, first of all, thanks for the conversation and thanks how you're equipping leaders. I have loved the journey with Maxwell Publishing. And so, for those of you listening, if you're considering writing, really do connect with Jared and the team because they are doing such good work in helping support authors and help us bring our dreams to life. And so, I would just encourage you, if you think there's a book in you, just start writing. Give it the little margin, give it the space. If you think it's a way to help support the work that you're doing, it absolutely is such a unique opportunity to really give a piece of legacy, right? Like you look at a printed book and it's kind of it's a reflection of your life's work, and that's such a reward, so rewarding. So
Jenni, you're such a joy, such a pleasure to work with. I can't wait to see how the book moves. And also, again, just thanks for being with us and adding value to authors, aspiring authors alike today. As always, we are grateful that you're here with us, listening, watching, tuning in, wherever you're taking part in this with us, joining in this community. But we do this for you because we believe that the world needs the book in you. We'll see you next time.